I've spent years studying the psychology of breakthrough communication, and I've discovered something interesting. The most impactful communicators aren't necessarily using fancy techniques, but they're working with the way the brain naturally processes information. Today, I'm going to share 9 psychological insights that have completely changed the way I approach communication, and number 4 really surprised me when I first heard about it. Let's get started with the first one. When we try to communicate something important, we often make this huge mistake. We try to make our message as easy to accept as possible. We think if we can just make it simple enough, clear enough, people will get it. But research shows that if something is too easy to accept, our brains actually value it less. It's like there's a sweet spot of mental resistance for really making ideas stick. Think about the last time you changed your mind about something really important. Chances are it wasn't instant. You probably had to wrestle with it a little bit. When a certain idea requires the listener to make a big update to their existing mental schemas in order to accommodate it, that's going to cause more feeling of mental resistance in their mind than something that requires a small update to their mental schemas. So, if you focus too much on making your communication smooth and effortless and easy, that might also make your message less impactful and a bit more boring. Okay, so that's the first big idea, that a little bit of resistance can actually make ideas stick better. The second insight has to do with how new information needs a little bit of something to grab onto in the listener's mind. We don't remember new information when it's just floating around in our mind. It needs something to stick to if we're going to remember it. Think about Velcro. You need both sides for it to work. You need the little hooky side and the fluffy side, and they come together, and that's what creates Velcro. A lot of people, when they communicate, they throw a bunch of information without creating hooks for it to stick to. It's like trying to stick two fluffy sides of the Velcro together. It doesn't work. But research shows that our brains are constantly trying to stick new information onto things that we already know. So when you want someone to remember something new, you first have to activate a few other relevant ideas in their brain that it can stick to. Okay, so we've seen how resistance can be good and how we need to create hooks for our ideas to stick to. Now, let's look at what we can learn about communication from why Netflix is so binge worthy. Have you ever noticed how Netflix keeps you watching? They create these little tensions that need resolution. Every episode is opening up new little mysteries that you want to keep watching so you can figure out how they're resolved. What's fascinating is that this same psychology works in any kind of communication. Our brains are wired to crave completion. When there's a gap between what we know and what we want to know, it creates this mental tension to resolve it. So instead of just saying everything up front, try to create little mysteries that get people leaning in and wanting to learn more. Okay, so we've looked at the benefits of resistance, the importance of creating those mental hooks, and the power of tension. Now we're going to look at why most people resist new ideas, and it's not what you might think. Psychology shows that people rarely reject new ideas because they don't understand them. We resist new information because it conflicts with our identity, with the story that we tell ourselves about who we are. Think about someone who views themselves as really practical and down to earth. If you present an idea and they perceive it as, wow, in order to believe that, I would have to be one of those creative types, they're going to reject it. So try to frame your ideas not as replacing who someone is or conflicting with who they are, but enhancing who they already are. When you can do this, their resistance will melt away. Okay, so we've seen how resistance works, how ideas stick, how to create tension, and why identity matters. Now, for our fifth insight, we're going to see something fascinating about mental defenses. Most people view mental defenses as an obstacle that we have to get past in communication, but research doesn't actually support this. Your listeners' mental defenses are actually your ally as a communicator because once you can get them to accept a new idea, those defenses are what's going to actually protect it from outside influence. I found this from working with clients in our ghostwriting business. The ones who were the hardest to convince at the beginning ended up being our biggest advocates later on. Once you can satisfy someone's natural skepticism, they actually become more invested in the idea. What's fascinating is this same pattern shows up in the psychology research over and over. The stronger someone's mental defenses are, the tighter they're going to hold on to an idea once you can get them to accept it. Okay, we're more than halfway through. We've covered resistance, hooks, tension, identity, and defenses. Now, for the sixth insight, we're going to look at something really interesting about how attention actually works. Most people try to maintain attention by talking louder and faster and being more dramatic. But the psychology actually shows that genuine curiosity is more like a switch in the brain. Once it's flipped, people can't help but pay attention. What's fascinating is that our brains are wired to pay attention to very specific things. It's not random at all. We're naturally curious about things that feel relevant to our goals, but contain some element that our brain can't predict. Instead of trying to be entertaining, focus on trying to find that sweet spot between what someone wants to know and what they don't expect. So, we've seen 6 insights on how people process information. Now, for number 7, we're going to look at something that happens when people are in a group. Every group has what researchers call a status game. It's something that makes people feel valued and respected in that particular context. In some groups, it's being the most innovative, in others, it's being the most practical. What's interesting is that people will automatically pay attention to information that helps them win their status game. This isn't conscious, it's something that we do automatically. Our brains are constantly scanning the environment and looking for any information that can help us elevate our status in contexts that we care about. When you can frame your message in that way, it's much more likely to get through. We're almost there. We've revealed 7 insights about the psychology of communication, and the 8th one has something really interesting about why some ideas break through while others bounce off of our mental defenses. It turns out our brains don't just collect information, they organize it into what psychologists call mental schemas. Think about how your phone organizes apps into folders. Our brains do the same thing with information. What's interesting is the best communicators don't just share information, they help people reorganize their mental folders. What research shows is that these reorganization moments where you suddenly see familiar things in a new light are more powerful than learning completely new information. Okay, we've covered 8 insights on how our brains process new information, and the 9th one is going to bring everything together and show us how to make ideas stick in the mind. Studies show that the moment when we discover something for ourselves is so much more powerful than when someone tells us the same information. Most of us try to convince others by telling them what to think or telling them what they should know about something. But our brains are actually wired to place much more value on ideas that feel like we've discovered them ourselves. What's interesting is that our brains don't seem to really differentiate between if we did all the work ourselves or if someone else helped us get there. So as communicators, we can give someone all the pieces and help them figure out how they all fit together. It's like when your kid attaches the last few Legos to the spaceship and you let them feel like they made the whole thing. Communication works best when we follow this same formula. So those are the 9 psychological insights that have completely changed how I communicate. Hopefully you found them helpful too. Follow our channel for more insights about how the mind works and how to communicate better. And drop me a comment letting me know which of these ideas resonated most with you. I'll see you in the next video.